Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Flash Notion here, and this is a bit unexpected. I wasn't sure if I was going to be doing this, and moreover, I thought if I was going to do this, I'd have to wait so long that this would come out later. But no, this is going to be the first video that I come back on. Aside from the update that would have been posted yesterday, I guess. So yeah. Spider-Man No Way Home! Yay! So yeah, the third MCU movie that is actually about Spider-Man. Because he's appeared in 3 others actually, so technically, this is the 6th MCU Spider-Man movie, but this is only the 3rd one where the focus is actually on him. Yeah, and there were a lot of rumors leading up to this one coming out. A lot of theories that I was very hesitant to believe or get excited for until the trailer came out. I kind of wish I'd recorded my reaction to that first trailer, because my reaction was basically, holy shit, it's all true! Yeah, no, that was a great fucking trailer. And yeah, so since then, I'm watching this I'm watching this in March, so the the movie's been out in theaters for a while. I've heard all the confirmation that I needed about various characters. I know who shows up. I know which actors are involved. There might still be a few surprises that I haven't heard about, but for the most part, I think I've got it down what's going to happen, but I'm still so excited to see how it happens. And for that matter, just no matter what, this is just going to be a good, fun movie. I mean, I haven't heard anything too bad about it. There's some people who have pretty much the same complaints about all the MCU Spider-Man movies. So, obviously, there's that. But, loud-ass car. Your car's farting. But yeah, so, excited to watch the movie. Was not expecting to get to it this soon, but apparently it leaked early, so they moved up the digital release. Which is, both upsetting and also kind of cool for me. So yeah, Spider-Man No Way Home. Let's get to watching. So we will start this movie in 3, 2, 1. Okay then, so, for me, it's actually the next day. I did not have time to record this last night. But I'm back, and, yeah, this movie. It does a lot of things that I thought were really cool and really fun. And for the most part, I'd say that I liked it, and it's a good movie. But there's also a few issues that I take with this movie. So I guess that's where we'll start with these. And up front, I mean, this being the next day, I have taken a little bit of time to look up the stuff on like TV tropes and also to look up a couple of things on YouTube. So like I've heard some other people's opinions about this movie, and I wouldn't say that like people's opinions are the same as mine. The things that people take issue with aren't necessarily the same things that I do, but it's just good to have those little bits of extra perspective and to know a few things about the movie that I wouldn't have otherwise. But let's start with the thing that I find the most objectable, and that is, for me, Aunt May dying. And like, I get it. I get what they were going for. They were trying to make her the Uncle Ben of this version of Spider-Man, which raises a few questions. We'll get to that. And there were elements of it that I did like. I liked her being the one to tell Peter that iconic phrase: "With great power must come great responsibility." It's a cool thing to change which parent, parental figure, I guess, actually, is responsible for telling him that. So I like that element. But I can't get over the fact that they basically stuffed Aunt May in the fridge. Because that's a trope that has been around for a while, and you think that technically it doesn't apply. Like, usually it's reserved only for love interests. So there is that kind of distances it from the trope. Right. So Aunt May was more of a mentor figure. And, they're trying to make her the Uncle Ben, and Uncle Ben obviously dies, traditionally, after giving Peter that phrase. I think the main issue that I take with Aunt May dying in this one is specifically when she dies. Alright? Because her death is the midpoint of the movie. And it's... Aunt May is specifically killed by the Goblin essentially to provoke and motivate Peter. And that's the part where the stuffing in the fridge comes in. It's not just the fact that she died, it's why and when she did. Compare it to the PS4 game that relatively recently came out. Alright? I haven't played it, but I have seen the story. I've seen other people play it, so I know what the story is. Aunt May dies in that game at the very end. She was throwing up blood the entire time, but she didn't die until the very end, and it was essentially Peter's difficult choice of, he had to do that in order to save the city. He had to let her die in order to save the city, and, yeah, in that regard, there's still people to blame for her death besides Peter. You could blame, in that movie, you could blame, or in that game, you could blame Otto, you could blame Martin Lee, you could blame Norman Osborn, you can blame Peter. But ultimately, the thing is that, it's not used to motivate Peter. It's tragic. It is. And undoubtedly it will provide motivation for him, probably in the sequel. But, in terms of that particular story, Aunt May's death is a consequence, not a necessity. And here, that's very different. Aunt May's death is a necessity for this story to happen. If she wasn't killed, I don't know if Peter would really be doing the same stuff. And honestly, I literally couldn't believe that they killed her. I kept waiting throughout the rest of the movie for them to have Aunt May show up again, having been taken to the hospital and having survived, somewhat miraculously. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. Because, you technically could have achieved the same end by having Peter think that she died. But no, they didn't go that route. And therefore, it's, it doesn't sit with me right. Especially because, if you look at the game versus this movie, the game version of Peter, he's been Spider-Man for ages. He's a full-grown adult. He's in college, and he all of his enemies, most of his enemies, I guess, actually have appeared. The only ones that haven't, as far as I can tell, they're major, are Doc Ock and Green Goblin. Which Doc Ock appeared in that game, and Green Goblin's going to appear in the sequel. So, there are reasons why in that universe those two enemies haven't appeared yet. But almost every other enemy has appeared. He's been operating as Spider-Man for forever. He got all the trophies scattered around the city. It's a lived-in world where Aunt May dying feels like... It feels like, she's been around long enough, even though this is the first game. It feels like Aunt May was around long enough for this Peter, for it to be impactful, to the audience. Whereas, honestly, we don't really get that with the movies here and Aunt May. She's been around, she was there in Civil War, in Homecoming for a little bit, in Far From Home for a second, and she was there for a decent amount of time in this one. And they set up Feast, which if they want to in the future, they could then bring in Martin Lee if they wanted to. And I guess Far From Home also had Feast be there, but not quite. It feels like they didn't give Aunt May enough to do in these movies, and then now she's just dead, so they don't even have to deal with it. It's just, it still doesn't sit right with me. So yeah. Going back though a little bit, I mentioned I had questions about Uncle Ben. So yeah, I do. If Aunt May is supposed to be the Uncle Ben of this universe, but Uncle Ben is already heavily implied to be dead. They've never come right out and say it, outside of the what if thing. I mean, I think they mentioned that, Aunt May lost Uncle Ben. But I don't know, they dance around it, and they never actually explain what happened. And now, all things considered, I really do have to wonder, what is the context of Uncle Ben dying in this universe? Because clearly, his death is not the same as the others. It's not... It doesn't seem like it was actually Peter's fault. He didn't let a guy go, and that resulted in Uncle Ben's death. He didn't have Uncle Ben impart those last words of wisdom to him that essentially scar him for life. But so I have to wonder if in this universe, maybe Uncle Ben's death was a lot less preventable, but also a lot less violent. You know, maybe it was like cancer or something. So yeah. So yeah, that's my biggest gripe with this movie. Is just I wish they'd found a way to do it without killing off Aunt May. Or if they have to kill her off, don't kill her off at the midpoint where her death is, you know, a motivating thing for Peter. Have it be a consequence, not a necessity. So okay. There's something that's not really a complaint, but I do feel the need to talk about it. So this movie was originally supposed to come out after Multiverse of Madness, when it was first conceived. So that's obviously, you know, not what ended up happening, but the fact that it was changed relatively late in terms of the production, I'm guessing, because there's definitely a scar on the movie because of it, and that is the fact that Strange mentions that he altered the spell 6 times. Alright? So he altered it for MJ, for Ned, for Aunt May, for Happy. Let's see. There was one other, right? Who was it that he was trying to... Whatever. There were 5 that Peter listed off as people that he wanted to know about his identity. And then Strange, you know, it was subtle, but he apparently added himself into that whole list. And so there were going to be 6 people that remembered that Spider-Man and Peter Parker were the same person. The spell was altered 6 times, and there were 6 variant, you know, bad guys, so to speak, that came through. I put that in air quotes because, well, obviously Doc Ock ended up being a good guy, and most of them weren't pure evil. And also, Venom, who shows up at the end, is not a bad guy. So, with all of that together, clearly the original version of this was meant to have it be that those were the only ones that were brought through by the spell. And Toby and Andrew, who came through, who appear later, in the original version of this, where Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness happens first, America Chavez was apparently supposed to be the one to bring the other Spider-Man through in order to help. Now, I don't know that much about Miss Chavez there, but I know she opens, like, dimensional portals. So, that's pretty cool. And, yeah, it would make sense for her to be the one to bring them through. Now, instead, we have it that, for random reasons, the spell brought through 8 variants, 2 of which were Spider-Man. And Ned opening portals is how they all meet up. Which, yeah, it's clearly a bit of a... Like, that's the shakiest element, I think, of the overall story. Like, I might not like Aunt May dying, but it is a solid plot point. The stuff about how the other Spider-Men come through, that's a little shaky. And, yeah. So, I just felt the need to bring that up. Let everybody know the trivia and whatnot. Yeah, so that's enough of bad stuff. Let's talk about the cool stuff, you know? I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is that, like, you know, at the end, he's like Peter's, in air quotes, supposed to be. broke, crappy apartment, no love life. Everybody hates Spider-Man, and he's got a freaking new suit that, you know what? The new suit looks amazing. I will not deny that. That is like the superior suit. Jokes about the names. But in all seriousness, the ending, it's all right. I can get behind that. They were trying. The whole movie essentially is acting as a reboot for the series, and I get what they were going for. It does kind of feel like a lot of stuff that happened in the past no longer has no longer has consequences, but like is just being erased, because now, he's not an Avenger. He has he doesn't have as much of a connection to all of the people that he had connections to. He can't just go to them for help, they won't just go to him for help because they don't know him. Which is, it's very, it's kind of upsetting, in that regard. But, I don't know how we're gonna fix that, if they are or not. Just in general, it's, okay, I said no more negative stuff. But, again, I get what they were going for. They were trying to do almost a comic book style reboot, where, like, this is the end of one writer's run on the series, and now it's going to be, new title, new writer, start fresh. And, yeah, I get what they were going for. I don't hate it. I wish they'd done it a little bit differently. I recently just read all the way through the Invincible comic, because I was thinking about season 1 of the Amazon show and waiting for season 2 and wondering, hey, what's season 2 gonna bring besides all the stuff that was in the at the very end of that first season. And I was just like, okay, well, let's read the comic and find out. So I read it all, and it was great. And the reason why I bring it up is because in that comic, there were several times when they essentially did a reboot, but they did it in a way that didn't erase everything that came before it. And it was really cool, and I wish they'd found a way to do something similar here. Right. But yes, no. The suit at the end, the promise of, maybe a slightly more comic accurate, so to speak, version of Spider-Man appearing in the future, one where he's not in high school, where he's trying to go to college somehow, all that sort of stuff. We could have it, and it would be pretty cool. I don't know how they're going to deal with the stuff with MJ, because they can't go to the same college, and she's on her way to fucking Boston. So they could go to the same college, but that would just have her accusing him of stalking her, which, yeah, that's not cool. So I don't know. But yeah. Otherwise, the ending was very, very somber. Not as fun as I would have liked, but I get what they were going for, so it was cool. And yeah, the rest of the movie, I'm happy that we got as much of Toby and Andrew as we did. I honestly thought they were not going to show up until the last 20 minutes of the movie, I guess, not counting credits. Because, I didn't think they would be there for half the movie. I thought they'd be there for, the final act, and that's it. But instead, they're there for half the movie. It's a good setup, and it's good payoff of them coming through, them talking with Peter, them all being geeks together, and having a lot of just fun moments. This is not just MCU Spidey getting to meet the other Spideys. This is all the Spideys getting to meet each other, and that's really cool. It's honestly, in a way, it carries a lot more weight than what the other Spider-Verse movie that we've had did in that regard. Because, like, when the Spider people in those movies or in that movie met, the audience didn't know them. We were being introduced to these other Spider people at the same time as the characters in the movie were. So, like, while it was fun to see them banter and whatnot, there was no emotional weight to it. Whereas here, we know all three of these characters, and seeing them meet on screen, especially after two of them we honestly figured we'd never see again, that's pretty freaking cool. And, they honestly did some similar stuff with the villains, where, like, we had Octavius and Norman talking, and we had Electro and Lizard talking, and Sandman showed up, and he's just like, I want to fucking go home, and everybody else is just like, dude, we're super villains. And he's just like, not me, I'm just a guy. So, like, yeah, it was all really, really fun, and just a very interesting way of doing it. It's not a Sinister Six movie. It's not quite a regular old Spider-Verse movie. It's something, honestly, kind of new. Like, I cannot think of a comic book story like this. One in which, all these characters get to come together and, like, fix their own mistakes, but also help each other overcome their trauma, and, like, yeah, I can't think of another story quite like it. And, there probably is one or two out there in, like, the entire fucking, 80-year history of comics? I don't know. So, like, there's probably one out there, but I don't know it. But speaking of, like, the characters from other movies, like, holy fuck, the music in this movie was great. Just every time you could hear one of the characters' themes, like, obviously I'm more familiar with the Danny Elfman themes, Doc Ock and the Spider-Man theme, except when it comes to Electro's music. Electro's music is badass, so there's that. But, like, yeah, just every time I hear a musical cue throughout the movie where it's like, I recognize that. And, like, they're also really good about that. Well, they're good about it. I also wish they'd, done it a little bit differently, but, like, for the most part, they're good about it. They did it in a good way, where it's like, they only started reusing those musical cues after the characters actually showed up. Because in that way, the music wouldn't be, like, a spoiler. And also, like, if you're watching in subtitles, they'd probably, there's a chance, depending on what subtitles you're using, that they might put in there, like, this character's theme is playing, because subtitles sometimes do that, and that could, pop up beforehand if they did it, differently. But at the same time, I'm a sucker for leitmotifs and having, character themes foreshadow stuff or happen right before they actually show up to give you just that little bit of, like, your ears recognizing something before it happens, and that way when it does happen, you get that little rush of like, I knew it! So like, yeah, I would have also loved it if like we started hearing those themes a little bit earlier. But that's just a purely personal preference, and has nothing to do with the actual quality of the movie. I think the music was fantastic, and definitely going to be looking it up after all this. So yeah, there is that. Yeah. I mentioned this also, but I do also wish the credits had shown us the alternate universes that were created by these new variants coming into existence. But unfortunately, not the case. But still, yeah, no, it was. It's just a lot of fun. I love seeing all the characters again. I really do like what they did with each of the characters. I don't know. I feel like I'm repeating myself on that end of things. So you know what? Let's ignore that. Let's go to what might be. Okay, not necessarily my favorite part of the movie, but like the one that has me the most intrigued for the future of Spider-Man and for the future of the MCU in general. And that is, the post-credit scene with Venom. Well, we don't really see that much of Venom. We mostly see Eddie Brock and hear Venom, but the end of that post-credit scene, we see that Venom, he popped out a bit of ooze. So, and my immediate response to that was that is a very bad thing. And there are lots of reasons why that could be a bad thing, but the biggest thing is that I really honestly feel like they might be setting up Null. I'm going to take a drink real quick because my throat's getting a little dry. Okay. So, there's been a lot of speculation on, who's the next big bad of the MCU. And right now, it kind of seems like it might be Krang? Kang. Krang is TMNT. Kang the Conqueror. Yeah, we saw a variant of him in Loki, Season 1. Now we're waiting on Loki Season 2. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania is going to have Kang in it. That was already confirmed a long time ago. We're setting up the Fantastic Four, which Kang's real identity is Nathaniel Richards. He's like a descendant of the Fantastic Four, specifically Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman, and yeah, just Kang in general seems like he's set up to be the next big bad. I kind of hope that they actually pull a bit of a bait and switch on us with that and have it be that we're setting up Kang just to have him because he's pretty cool, and then we can just have someone else be the big bad of this arc. Kang can be the big bad of an individual movie, but I don't feel like he's the next Thanos, I feel like if you're gonna do someone similar to Thanos, your next guy like that is probably Doctor Doom. So I want us to get there. So yeah, those are the two big contenders for who's next on the bad guy list. Null is a pretty big bad guy, and he's if they get to him, he's not gonna be until probably at least phase 6. At least. I'd honestly be shocked if they even did it then. They might tease him around that time. I mean, to put it into perspective, like, okay, our first big bad for the Avengers to fight was Loki. And, Loki, he's pretty strong. He's a physical god. He's got all kinds of magic powers and whatnot. And he had an army. But then, moving forward, we'll ignore Ultron and whatnot. But, like, we had Thanos. And Thanos, he could kill Loki really easily. And, like, he could gather all the Infinity Stones. And he was a huge badass. He was really powerful and really dangerous. And now, post-Endgame, we're starting to get introduced to some characters like the Eternals who could probably honestly deal with Thanos individually on their own. And actually, now that I think about it, we already had Scarlet Witch and even Captain Marvel. The power level of this universe is rising. We're at the point now where characters could casually just blow up planets. But we're still pretty low in terms of the hero's power level. We only just got introduced to the Celestials in Eternals, and they're whereas Loki and Thor, like, and even Hela, we'll touch on her more in a second. Like, those characters are gods with a lowercase g, and the Celestials are technically supposed to be gods with an uppercase G, even though they can be killed. But in terms of comparative power scaling, if Thor and the other Thor and characters like him are supposed to be referred to as gods with a lowercase g, Celestials would be gods with an uppercase G. There are characters in the Marvel Universe to whom the Celestials are nothing. There are many of them. We got the Beyonder, the One Above All, obviously. And, we got, like, the cosmic concepts, like eternity. But Null is on the lower end of that scale. He is a god in all caps. Alright? Like, that's the difference, Thor and them, they're a lowercase g god. Celestials are an uppercase g god. Null is a god in all caps. Alright? And I like the idea that we might be heading towards that. Now, I'd never finished reading the King in Black story, honestly. I couldn't be bothered. It was just spread out too much over too many comics, and the main story of it pretty much required you to read all of those in order to actually understand what the fuck was going on. So I just gave up eventually. I stuck with my my regular stories like Immortal Hulk. But as I understand it, Null is so OP that he almost literally required a Deus Ex Machina in order to beat. He is the god of all symbiotes everywhere in every universe. He's a multiversal entity that existed before the Marvel Universe actually came into being. And in fact, he might technically date back to, like, what was it, second or third iteration of the Cosmos. Because that's the thing in Marvel Comics. In the Marvel Comics, the Cosmos, it has existed 8 separate times, I want to say. And like there was a version of the Cosmos where science didn't exist, where magic didn't exist, where things only existed as concepts. There's a recent run of the Defenders that covered that, and it was really cool. But yeah, Null might have existed since like the second or third version of the Cosmos. He's that old and that powerful. And the reason why I'm so certain that we might be building up towards him is because we technically already have teased things about Null. More specifically, in the Eternals, in its post-credits scene, we had Mr. Whitman there, Kit Harington. He was about to pick up a sword with a very odd blade. That character is supposed to be the Black Knight, and he wields a special sword that is actually forged from, I want to say it was forged from symbiote material. It's a sword that could hurt Null, specifically because it was like the antithesis of himself, but it was also made of himself. It's weird. It was definitely a retcon when it came up because like Null's a relatively recent addition to the comics roster, but all in all, the fact that they included that and the fact that they made the blade look like that, they made it look like a symbiote, that tells me that they might end up going in that direction. And the other thing that was really interesting and that they teased in What If, actually, is they talked about Hela's helmet. The magic helmet that she made that also apparently allowed her to produce all of the swords. Yeah, in What If, Episode 2, they called that a Necrosword. Now, in the comics, there's only one Necrosword, and it belongs to a character called Gore the God Butcher, or at least it used to. Now, Gore is set to appear in the next Thor movie, played by Christian Bale, no less. I'm very curious to see what he's going to look like. I imagine he's shaved his head and gotten fucking ripped for all of this. Unless they're using CGI, in which case, boo. But, the Necrosword actually, like, I was hesitant to say that the Black Sword was forged of symbiote material. No, the Necrosword was definitely forged of symbiote material. More specifically, it was forged of symbiote material prior to the dawn of the universe inside the floating head of a dead Celestial. Which, by the way, we've already shown in the MCU. We've been shown nowhere. That was Null's doing. Null was the one that killed that Celestial by chopping off its head. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. I might have mixed up some details there, honestly, actually, now that I think about it. Regardless, though, Null is a fucking insane character. And honestly, I really would like to see him done someday, because he's really cool in that kind of, like, maybe a little bit too try-hard, edgy kind of way. But, like, that just describes all symbiotes and everything relating to them. I mean, for fuck's sake, they have names like Carnage. So, yeah. I'd love to see Null be in a movie someday, but good God, I don't know how long it would take us to get there. It took us a decade to get through fucking the first 3 phases of Marvel. And, like, a big chunk of that was Phase 3. Or at least it feels like it was a big chunk of it. When did Phase 3 start? Phase 3 started with Civil War. Alright, I'm going to actually go ahead and look that up real quick. Marvel. Come on. Work with me here. Okay, the Infinity Saga. Phase 2 started in 2016, ended in 2019. Okay, so that's 3 years. Phase 2 took only 2 years, and Phase 1 took 4 years. Huh. Well, either way, Phase 1 only had 6 movies. Phase 2 only had 6 movies. Phase 3 had... Holy shit. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10... Had 11 movies in it. Phase 4, so far... discounting the fact that we skipped a year, Phase 4, good God, it already has like twice that many planned out. I'd say almost that many have already come out, and Moon Knight's coming out soon. Multiverse of Madness is going to be soon. Thor's going to be soon. Good God, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more Marvel things coming out this year. Holy fuck. At least that's what's planned so far. Yeah, we have, holy fuck, yeah, 3 more Disney Plus series, another 3 movies, fucking another season of What If, the Guardians Holiday Special. Jesus Christ. Yeah, Phase 4 is going to last for we're only on year 2 of Phase 4. Alright, so Phase 4 is going to have a shit ton of Marvel stuff going on in it. It's going to be ages before we get far enough along in this universe to get to Null. And first we're obviously at some point going to get Black Suit Spider-Man. We got to do that. We got to then actually bring in an Eddie Brock from this universe. Ooh. I just had a thought of, what if they didn't bother with an Eddie Brock? What if they gave it to Flash Thompson? Because he's shown that he's not a complete bad guy. He's a douche, but he's also just a kid. And we've set up that he's got some family issues. That he's constantly trying to earn people's love and affection, and he just wants friends and people who actually care about him. Honestly, he's at a perfect place where he could be a target for a symbiote. Plus, his family's rich, so he could travel around a lot. He's going to MIT, but he could easily take a vacation to wherever the fuck Eddie and Venom were at. I think Mexico? I don't know. He'd be a prime target for a symbiote right now. And he does get it in the comics, and he becomes Agent Venom. That would honestly be pretty cool. Because, then, if they did that, if they had him be the first one in this universe to get the Venom symbiote, and it was, the same Venom from that movie, basically, just, a branch of it, because, the symbiotes are a weird hive mind. It would be pretty cool if they just skipped over the Eddie Brock angle and just went straight for Flash. I could see them doing that. But yeah, Either way, we gotta get. We're probably gonna get Black Suit Spider-Man at some point. We're probably gonna get an actual Venom at some point in this universe. And I don't know if they'll go for Carnage. Carnage seems like it would be a little bit much for the MCU, I'll be honest. I mean, we did just declare Daredevil canon, apparently. And, Jessica Jones, by extension. All of the Netflix shows, including The Punisher. So, they could go for Carnage, I guess. I'd like to see a more accurate Carnage, where he's, an actual just, I want to kill everything sociopath. Because, I mean, yeah, Let There Be Carnage was a bit of a disappointment in that angle. I guess their version of Cletus was not fucked up enough somehow. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing with Carnage, is that, he's honestly, it's weird, because, you have someone like the Green Goblin, and he is just awful. He is bad news, and, but then you get someone like Carnage, and it's just okay, the Goblin, at least I can understand him, and maybe see why he does certain things. Carnage is just, he kills for the sake of killing. Most of the time. Sometimes they decide to give him a conscience, and it's weird. But, yeah, Carnage is a bad guy. And like I said, I wouldn't mind seeing a version of him that is more accurate to the comics. But at the same time, I don't know if I want that in the MCU. But I'm not sure how they'd really lead up to Null without him, because Carnage played a big part in the lead up to Null in the comics. So there is that. We'd also need to just spread the symbiotes around a lot more, because, good God, there are just so many comic symbiotes. I mean, obviously they could condense it. They could even depower Null in this version. Because, I mean, theoretically, if they did a Null event in the MCU, I feel like they've connected the MCU to the comics at some point. Technically, that version, any version of Null that shows up here, because of Null's nature in the comics, would have to be the exact same character. Technically, they wouldn't have to mention it. They wouldn't have to do anything with that. But it would be really weird if they depowered him. So I don't know. Regardless, that's enough rambling about Null. But yeah, seeing Venom leave part of himself behind, it's gotten me excited for the possibilities of the future. I'll admit that. So yeah, I mean, this movie was fun, sort of. Not parts of it were fun, parts of it were cool. Other parts of it were depressing as hell, and I don't necessarily agree with the choices that were made in the writing stages. But overall, it's a good movie. I wouldn't say it's a good conclusion to a trilogy. And that's something I've always kind of felt, is that the MCU does not do proper trilogies, because they have all the team up stuff in between. Nobody is allowed to have just a character arc, that extends for more than one movie without it being interrupted by a team up. Literally, nobody. There has not been a single character that gets that. There hasn't ever been a proper trilogy of movies for any of these characters. You go to Iron Man, and they have the Avengers that need to watch in order for it to make sense. You go to Thor, and good God, I don't know how many movies you need to watch for that one to make sense. I'd say at least Age of Ultron in between. Most likely, actually, you would need to watch both Avengers and Age of Ultron, because, Dark World has Loki locked up and alive. So, like, yeah, there's required watching there. And then, Spider-Man here, you can't watch Far From Home without first watching Infinity War and Endgame. And you can't watch No Way Home without watching Far From Home. So, like, obviously the character was introduced in Civil War. So, like, there is required watching for this trilogy that's not actually part of the trilogy, which means it's not actually a proper trilogy. Like, it's just... It kind of sucks that the MCU cannot do a proper trilogy for these characters. But whatever. It's still a good movie. No Way Home is still a good movie, and, like, I don't know how much I'm going to be rewatching it. I honestly don't think it's that rewatchable, just because it has too many intense moments from the midpoint onwards. And, like, as I said, there's a lot of fun stuff, but there's also a lot of stuff that, like, it goes against it being just a fun, rewatchable movie, along the lines of, say, the previous two Spider-Man movies, or, Thor Ragnarok, or Guardians of the Galaxy. Not Volume 2. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 is, fun and rewatchable. Volume 2 is not. But yeah, there's plenty of MCU movies that are. I would not say this is one of them, but that is not a mark against it in terms of the quality of it. So yeah, it's just it is a good movie, and as I said at the very end of the reaction, I'd say it's a pretty solid 7.5 out of 10 sounds about right. Maybe 8, but I would not give this a 10 out of 10 or even a 9 out of 10. It's got a few too many issues. But yeah, still a good movie. So, that's gonna be it for me. I need to get up and get off from doing this. Yeah, I'm back. So, for those of you who stuck around this long and actually give a shit, look out for more videos coming soon.